Is Helldivers 2 finally good? Let's find out, since I haven't played much at all after the release. I uninstalled the game after reaching level 9 already, mainly due to the fact that it played really bad on my current rig at that point of time, but also being poorly optimized overall. To be honest, it's still a challenge for my current PC rig, but at least I can play now, so let's get into it. Now, there's been quite some controversy around Helldivers 2, performance issues such as shader compilation stutters, compatibility issues with some AMD GPUs, and an anti-cheat system in the game that is a kernel-based anti-cheat, and being a rootkit, it has the potential to cause problems if it gets compromised and starts escalating permissions within your computer. But it doesn't stop there, because PlayStation drew the ire of Helldivers 2 PC fanbase by announcing it would force Steam players to link their account to PlayStation Network, which is PSN. It said that PlayStation originally planned to force the account linking already at launch, but the game's server issues changed things, so they had to wait. This led to a lot of negative reviews on Steam, something that the developers encouraged players to do, since I can only imagine what they felt about this mess, and at the same time they were trying to focus on fixing servers and patches and whatnot. But Sony had probably not taken into consideration that a lot of people would start to refund the game, and also sharing their negative experiences, so that many other gamers decided not to buy Helldivers 2, at least not at that point of time. Because of this, Helldivers 2 was delisted in around 177 countries. By now, Sony was most likely sweating hard, so they finally had to reverse this decision, if you will, meaning that Helldivers 2 players on Steam won't have to link a PSN account in order to play. If I'll speculate a bit about the future, I believe that Sony will most likely not make this mistake again, and it's therefore only going to allow sale of their games in regions that PSN is supported. They did pull back this time, not so much because of the bad reviews that was coming in, but because Steam was giving justified refunds when it comes to their players and customers. But with that said, and also out of the way, let's get into the actual game. My first feeling and thought is that not much has changed since I last played, to be honest. But when I did look into the patch notes or updates that has currently been made, thinking mainly about the Escalation of Freedom update that arrived in August, I then realized that there's been new things added, such as new enemies, new worlds to explore, and new strongholds, some higher difficulty missions, and of course war bonds, which is essentially a battle pass. The devs used to aim to make new major updates every month for some time in the form of new war bonds for players to work through, but now things have changed, with the studio focusing on larger updates. With that said, there's now a new timeline for major updates. The most recent update was made in mid of September when I'm making this video, and it has been mainly focusing on balance changes. They have been reworking armor penetration, anti-tank weapons, and enemy armor and health values. They've also been overhauling different enemies to make them feel more rewarding to kill. Weapons such as autocannon, heavy machine gun, and anti-material rifle will be more effective now, something that has been appreciated by most players. I also see that there's been crash fixes alongside with miscellaneous fixes that has been taken care of, if you will, so the work to improve the game has continued. I don't know what more experienced Helldivers 2 players feel about these updates, but for someone that are revisiting the game, it feels good to get some new blood into the game, and I also got reminded how fun this game can be when you're playing with a friend or two. Yes, there's definitely player value to be found in Helldivers 2, and it will definitely keep you busy for some time. The question though is how the game feels after weeks or months of continuous gameplay and grinding. Are there enough content to keep the most busy players engaged over time, or maybe you've stopped playing because you felt that you've already done it all, so to say? Feel free to fill in here, since it's always interesting to hear from you guys that have been spending quite some time in the game. With that said, I wanted to check out how many people that are currently playing Helldivers 2. After the initial problems with the game as described earlier, Helldivers 2 have been able to come back to a certain degree, since we now can see that the majority of the reviews on Steam are mostly positive. But when I'm taking a look into the Helldivers Steam charts, we can see that there's an average of around 26k players and a small increase of players after the summer and forward, meaning from August up until now, which most likely correlate with the Escalation of Freedom update and more being released. At the same time, we can see quite a drop of players as a whole between March, especially in April and May. most likely due to the PSN issues, things going on, and some other stuff as well. Now, losing so many players in total is rough and tough as a developer, so I do hope that the current player base are the ones that will stick with the game, meaning being the core community. So is the game worth buying and playing? Is it good now? Well, for me it's two things. If I knew what would happen after launch, as described earlier in the video, also having a hard time playing the game initially, since it literally eats up your CPU alongside with other issues, then the answer is no. If I knew back then what I know now, I would not have bought the game in the first place. But at the same time, revisiting the game now, about 8 months after the release, it feels fun to play. At least for some time, since I also have to be honest and say that these kind of PvE co-op games can be fun for me for some time, but they aren't my first choice when it comes to FPS games, since I am foremost a FPS multiplayer dude. And however, I do have fun playing, but I have a hard time to see myself spending hour after hour in a style of a game such as Helldivers 2 in order to rank up, etc. and do the grind, since I also feel after just a few hours of playing that it starts to feel a bit repetitive. I know most games tend to do that, especially if you play a lot, but that feeling kicks in pretty early for me when playing Helldivers 2. Does that mean that Helldivers 2 is a bad game per se? No, not really. It's simply not my style of a game, especially when it comes to the long haul. So make sure, at least, that first off, you have the requirements needed spec-wise if you consider to buy and play Helldivers 2. And second, I would highly recommend you playing this game with friends, or at least one friend. There are more reasons than one why that is preferable in this game, but at least keep that in mind when you're about to open up your wallet. With that said, I would say thanks a lot for watching, very much appreciated, and also feel free to leave a comment when it comes to your thoughts or and experiences when it comes to Helldivers 2. Take care and talk to you soon again. Later!